Я увидела, насколько это тяжело для тех, кто находится в эмиграции.
Hi, everyone who's joined newly. There are some issues in the room with the screen, and that's why we haven't started yet. So we just ask you to please bear with us as we try and get it sorted.
So, everybody in the room, welcome. We are going to start. I'm handing over the microphone to our moderator, Nelia Rakimova, who is here to moderate our session of today and introduce the speakers and the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I hope you can hear me. Maybe Hannah, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we hear you very clearly.
Perfect. Thank you. So, yeah, as you can see, we have some challenges today with our hybrid format, but I hope that now we will have a fruitful discussion for next 1.5 hours, a bit less. And again, welcome to everyone here in this room and online. My name is Nelia Rahimova. I represent a Coalition of Civil Society for Sustainable Development of Russia. And today I will moderate this session. And before we start, I just would like to, maybe Sasha, you can switch the slide. Can you? Yeah, I would like in the beginning to say that today we have several speakers and the next slide, please. And before we actually will go to the speakers, we will have introduction on the concept, on what we are discussing today. And I think it's really important that today we actually organized this event from the ECE RSEM side, but at the same time we decided that it's really important because we are here at the Global Forum to discuss responsibilities of member states that are in our region for Global South. So that's why we actually selected this topic, and I think it's a right time and platform to discuss this. Before I start, I just would like, again, the next slide, please, remind you about rules of our event for those who are in the room and for those who are online, that we would like that it's a safe space for everyone. We respect each other. I will not go into details. You can see it in the screen because we already lost some time. And for those especially who is online, please remember to keep yourself muted, turn your video off if especially you have not a really stable connection. And of course we, as I said, should respect each other and speak, only one person is speaking, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I would like then to give the floor to our next speaker, presenter, Dr. Valentina Bodrun-Lungu from Gender Center Moldova, and also representatives of Women's Major Group. And Valentina today will give us a context where we are right now, in which situation. So please, thank you.
Nelia. Good afternoon, good night. Good evening to all of us in different countries. I hope we have many participants from different countries due to the fact that our discussion today has a very strong impact to all of us. At the beginning, we would like to mention some figures. Facts on inequality. 252 men have more wealth than all 1 billion women and girls in Africa and Latin American Caribbean combined. The wealth of the 10 richest men has doubled, while the incomes of the 99% of humanity has declined due to the COVID-19. The world's 10 richest men have seen their combined wealth increase by $500 billion since the pandemic began. More than enough to pay for COVID-19 vaccine for everyone and to ensure no one is pushed into poverty by the pandemic. Also, it's very important to mention the global north impact on people and planet. 20 of the richest billionaires are estimated on average to be emitting as much as 8,000 times more carbon than billion poorest people. Nearly $2 trillion of damage inflicted on other countries by US climate emissions. Fast fashion is responsible for 10% of total carbon emissions and produced 20% of the total global water waste. Fast fashion employs 1 in 6 workers in the world in 2021. Most of them are women who are employed in an unsafe, underpaid, and under-regulated environment. The EU exported around 33 million tons of waste last year. Around half of which went to poorer from non-OECD countries, which weak waste management. Management rules than in EU. It's more weak, actively shipping EU pollution abroad. And one of the more critical, sensitive point for today, it's connection between fossil fuels and oil and gas. Fossil fuels are directly linked to wars. Iraq-Iranian war, Gulf War, Sudanese civil war, also today Russia war in Ukraine since February 2022. Rosneft, one of the Russia main petroleum company, is main supplier of Russia army. The war in Ukraine is a global threat for nuclear war, for global food security. Moldova, my country, has received 200,000 refugees on 2.6 million population, largest share per capita. Efforts are on the way to have war crimes in Ukraine recognized as war crimes and ecocide. Russia and United States, not member of the International Criminal Court, which prosecutes war crimes. 16 million people, mostly women and children from Ukraine, are displaced and refugees. Thinking on this. But to end wars, we need to divest now from fossil fuels and nuclear energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valentina, for all these impressive and striking numbers. I actually, every time when I see them, it's it's just, yeah, so horrible, actually. Sorry for my personal opinion here. But yeah, today, exactly in this context, we would like to have a conversation, open conversation with our speakers, which I will just introduce. And I would like to encourage everyone to prepare questions, because after each speaker present, we will have several minutes for questions. So please, if you have any comments or questions, also for those who are online, I hope we will be able to hear you. So please, we would like it to be interactive session, so we would be happy to hear your questions and comments. And now I would like to invite our first speaker. Yes, I know. So yes, I would like to invite our first speaker from Asia-Pacific Forum on Women, Law and Development, April Porteria, who will be speaking on behalf of Asia-Pacific Regional Engagement Mechanism. April, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me online? Okay, so the room is very big. Thank you for joining us, no, and for inviting us also from the APRSM to be here, and happy to share the realities from our region, because as we know, we have a lot of commonalities. Yeah, I mean, the crisis is everywhere now. So I have prepared some points, talking points, but yeah, feel free also to share, because I know that, as I mentioned, we have a lot of commonality. So, as we know, most countries in the Asia-Pacific region are former colonies of the global north. So, we have been talking about historical responsibilities. Centuries of extractivism and slavery has left many of our countries in the region behind in terms of socio-economic development. So, at present, most of our countries are developing and have been at the receiving end of the multiple crises. So I am from the Philippines. Climate change, the crisis there on climate change has been very felt by the people. Environmental degradation, about mining, and also financial and political crisis, as well as military occupation and civil unrest. So this current crisis is a result of conscious excessive extractions of the world's resources by the rich, shaped around patriarchal and monopolistic global economic systems. So we have been talking about this, no, how the systemic barriers, systemic challenges has been really, has been designed to really oppress and extract from the people. Former colonizers continue to plunder the global south through international mechanisms that allow them, especially the world's richest men, to control over natural and social resources and even bodily autonomy of women. So Valentina shared earlier that most of the world's riches are controlled by men and controlling us. We can see this in the WTO, IMF, World Bank, and the realization of their policies at the local level. So these relationships between the former colonizers and their former colonies continue in this manner. This relationship perpetuates various systemic challenges and has not allowed real development in the former colonies. So we don't, for example, in us, in the Philippines, we don't really have what we call national development. We're reliant on external financing. We're reliant on foreign direct investments. So yeah, for example, the Philippines, a former colony of the United States, has been continuing military and economic relationship with the U.S. So this is coupled by various foreign direct investments that are detrimental to human rights of indigenous and marginalized communities. So in the form of mining, for example, or any extractive industries that are, which are going into the domains or ancestral domains of indigenous people. The government has also been proposing to increase the percentage of foreign ownership, so liberalization of basic social services. And also, yeah, as mentioned, the country is also among with the highest number of human rights and environmental defenders killed in the region, as seen also on how the struggles and how foreign direct investments have been impacting. In the other part, in Papua New Guinea, in an island called Bougainville, extractive industries continue to wreak havoc not just on environment but also starting to show long-term effects on the community's health. So particularly women and their children, where we have been hearing stories of long-term effects of the mining there on pregnant women, for example. And yeah, in areas where mining operations are intensified. And of course, with climate change exacerbating these already existing conditions, people are further pushed to the margins. In South Asia, countries continue to experience extractivism too. So in the case of investor-state dispute settlement, further undermine national sovereignty as well as violate the right to self-determination. So in the case of Pakistan, for example, on the Reko mining, so a Washington, D.C. court has denied Pakistan's motions to stay enforcement of a $6 billion award against the country in the Reko case by the International Center for Settlement of Investor Disputes. So because the ICSID imposed a $6 billion fine on Pakistan last July 2019 for revoking a contract for mining at Reko in Balochistan in Pakistan. In Sri Lanka, we are now seeing the deterioration of democratic institutions and how the debt crisis has led to such chaos in the country. Sri Lanka has been reliant on external financing, and now they are still working towards getting bailed out by the IMF. So the very same actors who caused their collapse are seen as saviors. The current neoliberal economic model of development has perpetuated the extractivist and profit-oriented legacy of former colonizers to their now called neo-colonies, especially in Asia-Pacific. Historical responsibilities of countries and elites within these countries whose consumption and production and extraction patterns have led to human rights violations, global warming, and environment disasters. So we can see how centuries of extractivism and basically also how the international mechanisms are designed is to continue extracting what's the resources from the global south. With this, we are consistent, the civil society in the region, in proposing development justice as an alternative to this extractivist, profit-oriented model of development, as it seeks to compel our governments to be decisive and holding corporations, especially from the global north, to be held accountable. So, yeah, something to share from our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, April. So I would like to ask if somebody in the room or online have any questions or comments on the presentation we just heard. Do you have, Sasha, somebody online?
Yes, I have a question here for April. In how far through the ECE, through the Asia-Pacific Regional Civil Society Engagement Mechanism, you have been able to bring especially these messages also to the attention of member states, and if you have had some impact through the mechanism with your key points on development justice?
Well, we have been trying hard. And with APRSEM being, something that we started from the region, it's really trying to bring there the voices of these people. So the stories I shared are the stories that we also, we try to bring in these spaces, because the APRSEM is a platform, as in Asia Pacific, most of our countries are. So we have been experiencing this, but most of our governments are also authoritarian, anti-people. So we use the platform at the regional level to really bring these voices at the regional level and at the global level, because it's very difficult for us to speak to our governments at the national level. So, and I guess in going into these spaces, the global north, the countries are more open to listening to us, and it actually helps in influencing or convincing, or I don't know, some kind of presenting to the governments in Asia Pacific that you need to listen to your people. So I guess this kind of spaces are helpful, and I mean it's a long way to go for our governments to listen to us, but at least something that we build solidarity with, especially with you, with some open governments.
Any other questions? Yeah, maybe I will then use the chance and also ask the question, because in our description we really try to say that we want to stay on a positive side. So I would like to ask you, April, another question. Can you say that there is some positive change or best practice where you actually can say that some issues were solved, or at least advocacy actions were fruitful so far, or we still stand where we are?
It's very difficult to say. Well, our countries are... I cannot say it's positive with our countries, because with the crisis now, COVID has been used to really silence the people. And even going here, it's very difficult. Getting US visa, for example, is very difficult. Maybe something positive is how we engage with ESCAP, because ESCAP has been, through APRSM has been, at least, if not they agree with development justice, they are open to a more vibrant and vibrant CSO participation. So I guess if there's something positive, but of course the space is still limited. Funding and going in the global space is very difficult. So yeah, it's a long way to go. And maybe something positive also is the people at the ground, how the struggles are continuing, how people are still resisting, are still trying to speak up, even though we're being harassed or we are being killed at the local and national level. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So then, if there are no more questions and comments, thank you very much, April. I would like to invite our next speaker, Emilia Reyes from Equidad and Campaign of Campaigns. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to congratulate the organizers in calling for this brave conversation. That is not easy, that shouldn't be positive, that should not be pleasant, that should be very uncomfortable for our colleagues in the Global North, because this is not only the doing of the decision makers, it's also the doing of the lack of actions of the citizens for so long who have benefited from the impacts of the extraction in our territories. So this has to be a difficult conversation, and I think it's really unfair to ask what are the positives to someone from the Global South, and or to expect that this side event is gonna focus on the positives. We have to focus on the negatives, because the world is on fire. And I just wanted to say also, this has nothing to do with the previous comment. I wanted to bring this up from my own experience. The tone policing that we get from our colleagues in the Global North is really problematic, that they call us emotional when we see the destruction in our countries, that they call us irrational, that they call us over the top, and with the implication of a colonial mindset as well, that the rationality is coming from the passivity and the lack of action of our Global North colleagues. So I just wanted to say that the tone policing has to stop, even more now, when we are seen as a threat to your reputations, to your names of organizational tags, or your role in any reformist attempt you want to have. And I'm calling out to the NGOs here, the organizations here, because it's very easy to call out the governments. We have the information. If you don't have the information, don't bring us Global South partners to educate you. You have to educate yourselves. But what we are having here is a very difficult conversation on what we expect from you as colleagues in the Global North. And just want to say, it may seem like a debate between reform and revolution. I'd say there are many ways to do reform internally without becoming organic to the system, without being complacent to the system, without being conciliatory within the system. In the Latin American region, we have a feminism, a tradition of feminism that is structural, and we call it the tradition of rupture, because we will never be aligned with conciliation. We don't want to reconcile and merge with a system that is destroying the planet. And what we are seeing in INGOs, what we are seeing in organizations in the global north who call themselves our allies, are precisely merging themselves with a system that is criminal. And we are actually even questioned in our terms. I was just saying in a letter, and I'm just warning, the FFD group may not sign the letter that is going to come out of the coordination mechanism, because they're toning down the language, because they're scared how will the member states will see us. Well, we have a responsibility, because the FFD group posed a suggestion of language saying that the hoarding of vaccines is genocidal to the global south. And we were told that is not legally accurate. What the fuck? I'm sorry. This is the first time in history we're seeing a pandemic in this dimension. 17% of the population in Africa has had access to vaccines. You don't like the legal term? You don't like the interpretation? So let's delete that. And let's delete that then, the millions of people dying in the global south. Because we are putting the bodies, not the global north. We are sending the people to the jails, not the global north. And we're tired of that. We're tired to say, oh, you're so brave. No, we want you to be brave. Don't call us to say, you're so enlightened. No, we need you to be enlightened. We need you to start doing actions. And I just want to say this is so important for us, because you have an historical role. You cannot be organic. You cannot be organic to the system that is destroying, because you are reproducing the coloniality of the dynamics. We are now calling for degrowth in the global north, for this global south to develop. We're also calling for degrowth in the richest of the territories in the global north to achieve decent standards of living. And even then, my own colleagues in the global north say, Emilia, you're being too harsh because there are inequalities in the global north. No, we have no pity for you. Even your homeless have access to vaccines. There is no measure of the depletion in our territories, the number of deaths, millions, now and in the past. So don't you even dare to say, oh, you're being too harsh. We want you to educate yourselves on the real data. And even more importantly, I'm just going to say, I'm fuming. Noeline is fuming. Shiva is fuming. Our leaders in the global south are fuming. Why? Because we are seeing the damage that we are seeing in our communities, with our collectives, with our colleagues. And why? Because we don't see any action from the global north. And you know why as well? Because the IPCC report was launched. And because we didn't know that the end was so near. And organizations are not taking 1,000 steps back to say, we need to be more radical, more bold, to act in a different manner, in a solidarity way with the global south to shift the system. And even if the world is coming to an end, we're going to do it fighting. Not merging to the system because I'm scared of what are they going to say, and the donor and the member state and my image. We cannot just say that. We cannot just wait and see. I just want to say I was a reformist. I'm still a reformist. But we cannot be the same reformists we were in 5 years ago, or even the last year. There is a point of shift, dramatic shift, and we need to learn from that. So I just want to say I'm really, really grateful that our brave colleagues in the global north are inviting us to have this conversation, and I hope this is the starting point of many other internal and very difficult discussions, because they're going to have to analyze the risks, and I hope they take some. They cannot just say it's too risky and we're not going to do anything, because people in the south, they are dying. We are facing the risk now. So once they have analyzed the risks and come up with bolder proposals, we will be there. In the global south, we will be there. And we love you very much. The activists and allies we are seeing there with their hearts where they should be, we will be there with you. We cannot accompany you in your passivity, but we will be there for any bold action you take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emilia. Any questions?
There's a hand over there.
Hello, I'm Ines and I always feel attacked when people talk like this because, of course, I am situated in Global North. But I must say that, as you said yourself, Global North is very diverse. And my question is to you or any other panelist. We see now the situation, how Russia is aggressively killing civilians in Ukraine. And Ukraine is not Global North, I must say. At least I think so. I don't know your, systematization of Global North, of course. But my question is, how Global South could stand in solidarity with people in Ukraine and civilians killed? Or do you think that there is competition who is much more important in this way and they are also a Global North and we shouldn't support them? Thank you.
I just want to react very quickly to say, I think people should not self-center themselves in this conversation, but go into a systemic question if there is a conversation on Ukraine and Russia. We have here panelists who are better placed to address that, but I think the systemic conversation cannot be evaded just by asking, where am I located? Am I there? Am I not? Am I part of the problem or not? This is a broader conversation. Even the Ukrainian war situation comes with larger implications, and this is an invitation. This side event is an invitation for that. So I'm not located to say Ukraine is north, south, are we competing? And I'm not going to go into that conversation, but I'm just going to expand this response, this answer even more to say, if you are in the global north, if you are close to the global north because of inheritance, because of occupation, but if you have historically also been benefited from that, you have to think about broader than your frontiers and your borders, and how do you can place that conversation within your realm, as Ukrainians have also been doing in the past. But I don't think it's fair to start again with the question of, are we suffering more than you? Because I'm going to say, in the past, the millions of the southern people who have died in the genocide, in the invasions, we have the numbers. Do we want to go into the battle of the numbers? I don't think so.
Yes, Sasha, please.
Thank you. I have a question in the screen and a comment. First of all, from Raisha saying, analyze the risk, yes, and take these risks, indeed. So that, I think, is confirmation. And then for Emilia, a question from Isabel about the role of young people from the Global South in advancing this conversation, seeing the fact that they have so many barriers to access spaces of power.
I mean, I know there are other speakers, so just want to say that in the Global South, there are differentiated measures that need to be taken. The first one is that they're in a state of emergency. We are seeing the collapse happening now in the Global South. So communities, not only young people, but everybody's living in the state of emergency. There are structural solutions and proposals like April was mentioning, but we need to give them space and time and funding and, the recognition to work on both. Young people globally, they're facing another challenge, which is precisely the intergenerational equity and the fact that we have, for the first time in history, destroyed the possibility of any dignified life in the future. So we have been massively violating the rights of future generations, and there is no accounting for that. So I'd say, again, this type of groups, we need to uphold them, we need to bring them into the table, we need to recognize that they're hurting, and we need to recognize that they have to have a say in the solutions, because they will be facing the impacts of their anguish and of the impacts that they're living now. And so it is a very tough question, and we will be very happy also to come up with, to hear what the youth are saying and the children are now saying to support them in their political engagement in this type of crisis.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? No. I actually would like then again raise question to Emilia. I personally really love when we have constructive conversations, and I will be now like an imaginary world, but if I ask you like what like 3 key I don't know wishes or recommendations, or if we imagine that now member states from global north can like change something in their, I don't know, policies, activities, actions, like what would be these 3 key actions that they have to do that it actually will create like cascade of changes, you know, that actually all these calls that you were raising would be actually implemented?
Yes, thank you. I mean, it's difficult, and I know there are other speakers, so just want to say very clearly, one is to confront more openly the structure of the international economic and financial architecture. And there are many points of entry to that. The IFIs, the way that G7 and the G20 are illegitimate spaces of power, legitimized by the citizens, even now more with the war in Ukraine, because everybody is saying, oh, they're going to come and save us because they're bringing they're bringing weapons, they're bringing whatever, and they're placing it into the focus of everybody else. So I think this type of discourse is very risky, so citizens in the global north need to take a step forward and say what are a peaceful societies, come up with solutions that are really structural. The second one is to really tackle material resource use and energy use, because there's a combination of the impacts of extraterritoriality in the extraction in our spaces for all of the overconsumption that is happening in the north. So going to that is we are tackling pretty much everything, deep sea mining, everything. So I think we need to tackle on that. And thirdly, to fight corporation. The corporate power is so important, and most of them are located, not the 8 people that are the biggest millionaires, but really their offices, the way they are focusing and centralizing power and capital. So there is a need to confront more strongly those powers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your reply. Yeah. You would like to? Yeah, please, April.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just want to add on the point of how do we provide solidarity. I would agree on with Amelia on not really going into the discussion of who is suffering most or more, because obviously we are all experiencing systemic problems, and Filipinos could be also in solidarity with the Ukrainian people, for example. And I think that's the beauty of people-to-people solidarity and what we have been doing right now, and for inviting us from the Global South to share our stories and to hear also the stories of those suffering in the Global North. Because after all, the problem is systemic. The problem is, So yeah, glad to be here to really share this, to be in this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Svetlana, last question or comment, please.
Yes, I seen from yesterday that war in Ukraine became more like TV show on which different people from different countries are watching. Today's example from mobile phone, people seen how missile was directly into a carriage of children, and mother and children died. And they came a lot of letters from Russia when they, it is okay, it is very fine. And other people, and start to be like, on the screen we can see diets, on the screen you can see reaction from different people, of course, different. I don't want to use this. It is nothing critical, but it look like it is online show, not the war. I thank you for everybody, for really huge solidarity. It is all of us, all Ukrainians, are very thankful. But in the same time, I have the feeling that it is like TV show. I don't know how to react to this. Do you have any reaction? Sorry, thank you.
Any speakers, would you like to comment on that? Or
I do have a speaker online who would maybe like to comment on crises. I don't know. Betty Levy would like to.
Okay, yeah, we have a participant online who would like to comment on this.
Betty, the floor is yours. The floor is yours. Can you unmute yourself? Not working, I think.
Can you, Sasha, repeat it in the name and the microphone in case they didn't hear you? Because I cannot see who would like to talk.
Betty Levy would like to speak. Can we unmute her? Yes, she's unmuted.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm very happy to be having this conversation. I think it's an important one. It's one we started, I think, 2015. We started it. We had incredible fights within women's major group of the North taking responsibility. And unfortunately, I haven't seen that happen as much as we would like to see it happen. But I also don't think it's very helpful with the back and forth of, who's suffering more or not suffering. I think one of the really big issues for me, and a question I really want to ask from some of our OPs on the call and some of the more experienced people in doing this. So one of the problems in a country like the United States, regardless of who has been our president, we have never been able to organize our civil society to have a proactive voice. We really are like 52 separate countries. And while we are successful on some level within initially some states, not so much in other states, we can't get it together. I challenged Amelia the other day that she should take on helping to organize the United States. And I know the same issue in Canada, where they have 10 separate provinces that work totally independently of each other. I will ask our colleagues who are members of countries that are part of the EU, have the civil society within the EU been able to organize? Again, because that's multiple countries. It is easier, and I'm not putting qualitative on that or quantitative when I say easier, but when it is doing one little nation with maybe a couple of hundred or even 1 million people, as opposed to these huge countries with millions of people, I think it would be very helpful. I know that I have been willing to step up. I personally have said things, I've taken risks, I've called out governments, but I'm one person. How do we organize a country like the US? This is the help we need from our global South partners. And I appreciate Amelia saying, you can't give us advice, you can't help, you'll be there to support us. But we don't know how to get our head wrapped around how to do this. So it's just going to keep being an unending circle. So thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you very much. Emilia, if you want to comment like 1 minute or no, because it was like request.
No, just want to say more broadly, we can keep on having this conversation. We are seeing the rise of fundamentalism in the global north, the same way in the global south. We just need to be very strong in confronting fascism in the global north, because the impacts are hardly felt in the global south. So it's not the same. We have a fascist regime in one of our small countries than when it happens in one of the major powers and in your regions. So I just want to say that you also need to organize to work on the ground. We are doing that back home. We're not just engaging here in policy advocacy. We're also doing our work on the ground with social movements. And there is a gap here in the global north, and INGOs and organizations talking about social movements, but they really have no engagement with social movements, talking about justice, but really not being willing to confront their name, their tags, their reputation, and to be bolder and to use that legitimacy to push forward agendas. So this is what we want to see, and as I said, we will be very happy to support that, but it's also about you in the global north engaging with in a matter of citizenship that I don't think has ever built before.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's just because we don't have more time. I wish we could spend the whole day on continuing this conversation, but I would like to proceed. And the next one, we would like actually to present you a video. Am I correct? No, okay, let's go next to, I look that the order is changing here, so I'm trying to follow the slides, but then I would like to invite our next speaker, Wolfgang Oberland from German NGO Forum on Environment and Development. Please.
Yes, thank you, Nelia. It's always a bit difficult to speak after Emilia. I know and love her, and we've known each other for many, many years, so I know what I'm getting into whenever I'm sitting on a panel with her. It's always a bit difficult not to get defensive after hearing something like that, and I'm trying hard not to be. So I want to I agree with her. And I want to give you an example of that tone policing also that we are seeing all over the place, not just from northern NGOs, but many, many people. For example, this morning in an event that I attended, someone said, the global situation and the geopolitics and everything is a bit complicated because we're having a trust crisis globally. And of course we do that. Of course, there's a lot of distrust around globally at the moment. The problem, however, is that, what's the cause for this distrust? And the cause for this distrust is very well-founded, and it is that nobody's trusting the global north anymore, I hope, because you shouldn't. Never, never, ever trust the global north, and by the global north, I mean, countries from Western Europe, North America, maybe some in the Pacific, well-off countries that have a lot of power and a lot of money. Because frankly, if we look at the historical responsibility, and that was the title of this event, and that's why I prepared a little bit for that, is the whole system that we're facing that April has spoken so well about, what it does to people on the ground this is not, it's not a system that just came out of the ground and it came into existence by chance or anything. It was built and it was designed to be exactly that way. So what we're seeing, the whole economic system, that whole system of inequalities, of extractionism, of exploitation, that is something that people built, and they wanted it to be and work exactly the way it is working. And to give you a couple of examples, of the kinds of footprints, of spillovers that this system is creating, or rather of, the mechanisms for how this system is working. And you all know these, but just to remind maybe ourselves of what's going on. First of all, we are living in a global society with a monetary system that is basically transferring money in the wrong direction, meaning to rich people. So we're living in a system that now is very prominent because we're having inflation. And with inflation, of course, we have central banks reacting to that. So interest rates are being raised in the United States, in Europe, in Switzerland, in the UK, in Japan. And that raising of interest rates is actually draining money out of the global south. Because, of course, higher interest rates means there is a higher rate of return on investments in the global north or just in credits. So money is flowing from the south into the north, and that will create devastation, unimaginable devastation, because it's coming at a point in time where the global south was already bankrupt, basically. after the pandemic, or not after, in the middle of the pandemic, governments don't have any funds left, and now the money is being drained away from them. And this is a system, it all sounds a bit like the weather, there's a high-pressure system somewhere, and no. This is very deliberate, and it's working the way it's intended to work. Another example is the whole tax system, or, it's not so much about tax, it's about, where profits are being allocated. And of course, the system is geared in a way that profits are being moved either to places where they're not being taxed at all, so to nowhere, basically, or to the global north. Coming from a country in the European Union, most of the tax havens that you usually hear about, like Switzerland or the Cayman Islands or whatever, they're part of the global north's tax system. And the most harmful tax havens and secrecy jurisdictions that we're facing are actually members of the European Union. The Netherlands, Ireland, Luxembourg. These are the big places where money is being hidden. In the United States, it's other states like Delaware or I don't know. So, this is not something, nothing is happening by chance here. Same for debt. I think it was yesterday or a couple of days ago that Reuters reported on that, Africa is indebted to private creditors in the global north 3 times more than it is indebted to China. So while all the global conversation is about the role of China, because there's there's intransparency with how much money is actually credited by China or whatever, but it's private creditors in the global north that hold the greatest debt and that are responsible for the greatest devastation in the global south. So let's not get distracted here, and let's point to where the actual responsibility lies, and that's with governments in the global north that are not willing, they're very able to, that they are not willing to actually, make those creditors responsible and to, go into debt workout mechanisms or whatever, because they easily could. It's just a matter of lawmaking, basically, and it's not like the north doesn't know how to make laws. They do know how to do that. They're just not trying, or they're not willing to do that. I'm not going to go into trade and TRIPS and, the horrible things that happened at the WTO a couple of weeks ago, because there you could actually see what's going on in the world. There's a coalition of countries, the EU, Switzerland, the UK, North American countries, that have been blocking any progress when it comes to making vaccines more available or having countries actually producing vaccines. What they actually achieved, and that's ingenious in a way, if you like that kind of thing, is they made it more difficult for countries to use the TRIPS liberal, the mechanisms in the TRIPS agreement that would have made it easier for countries to produce their own vaccines. There's no TRIPS waiver. It's a TRIPS plus. It's no waiver at all, what they agreed to in Geneva a couple of weeks ago. And, it's actually difficult to wrap your head around that, because, the discourse that we're hearing on a global level is so different from that. We're hearing, there's a lot of solidarity with the global south, and we're sending money, and we're sending vaccines, and we're sending this and that and the other. Don't get distracted by that. The goal is clear. It's extraction, it's exploitation, it's making rich people richer and not making poor people a little better off or whatever. So there's a big difficulty in here. And I also want to comment on, what that does to global solidarity. At the moment, we're in a very strange place, and I know you will ask me to be a bit more constructive, and I'm trying to now. At the moment, we're in a situation where, especially European countries in the EU, plus maybe the UK, we are in a very difficult position, because we're now facing some difficulties. With the war on Ukraine, I'm not going to go into the suffering of the Ukrainian people, but it's creating difficulties also for Western countries. There's not as much gas coming in. We're having trouble with heating and all that. Not yet, because it's summer, but it's going to happen like that. So our countries are, for the first time in my lifetime, for sure, are facing a little pressure. There's not much suffering going on. I think there's just a little pressure. And what our governments are now calling for is, please be in solidarity with us and help us with that situation. And they're calling for solidarity also from the global south. That's why our ministers, our deputy ministers are, traveling across Africa everywhere, and they're looking for different sources for the resources that we're not getting from Russia anymore. For, fossil fuels, I don't know, zinc and nickel and whatever. So we are now asking for solidarity from the Global South. And that is, it's just, you know, why would the Global South be in solidarity with the Global North in that situation where they are already stripped down to the bone, and now we're asking them to help us? It's mind-boggling, actually. The constructive part about that is, I think we are, for the first time in many, many decades, we are in a situation where I think if countries in the Global South, you know, take this seriously, where they can actually pressure the Global North into making changes. And for the first time, I have a feeling we could actually make northern governments to make some concessions. And I mean big concessions. I don't mean, you know, okay, let's cancel some public debt, because that's peanuts for most countries in the Global North. We'll get that, I think. That's not the problem. What we really need is to actually destruct and then rebuild the global financial system. So I mean, you know, get rid of the IMF and the World Bank and build something that actually works for the globe. And I think at the moment there is a window of opportunity, maybe. Maybe I'm delusional, and it's very likely that I am. But I think there's now a little window of opportunity where we can make that, because we can ask the Global North to be proactive and to put something on the table. If they're asking for solidarity, then do your job and do your part in that, and, you know, be forthright and do the right thing for once, just out of your own interest. And maybe that's a configuration where we can actually see a little movement, or maybe even big movement. I don't know. And what we are asking for is, you know, this might be the time. Let's have a global conversation on the global financial system, whether it's, you know, and why not use the financing for development process for that? That could be a good framework, because everybody is in there. We are all on an equal footing, sort of, because, I mean, we know how it works. But so I think for once there might be a chance that we can actually put things on the feet again, and from the head on the feet again. I hope I made some sense. If not, I'm very sorry. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think it made lots of sense, actually. Thank you very much for your contribution. Any questions or comments from colleagues here or online? Sasha, yeah, Sasha has some. Yeah.
We have a question from Shatta von Wiese. Please go ahead.
Yes, I am. I am the president of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos. We speak about a lot of what the global North has to do, especially EU, USA, etc. But what about China? I see that China is doing new kind of colonization in many countries, like my home country, Laos, in Southeast Asia. Why nobody is able to ask what China to do? This is my ask. Thank you.
Phases of colonialism we can see nowadays, and in previous time historically, different colonial war. And it is very connected with question previous. What do you think about colonial phase, not global South and global North? I suppose I agree with
Wolfgang?
Thank you. That's, of course, a little difficult, but frankly, of course, there's a risk out there that we're basically falling back into a colonial system where different power blocks, have their partners, former colonies, and now new colonies that they exploit for resources or whatever. So that's a very real risk that we're facing. That's the next, the next phase of capitalism that works in that way, and that reminds us, of course, of the not just colonial times, but also post-colonial times in the 50s, 60s, where that also happened during the Cold War, and where we had a little bit of the same situation. That's a very real risk, of course. However, I think we have a choice, and the choice is this: that we actually find a way, and that's why we're sitting here in the United Nations, and we have the difference. is now that we have the United Nations, where we can actually build a multilateral system that allows countries to make their own choices. And that's the difference that's different from the situation that we were in maybe in the 90s, for example, where, you know, if you were a country that needed investments and all that, you only had one choice, you had one partner to go to, and that was Western countries, rich countries from the West. Today you can make, you know, maybe, of course it's not that easy, I'm painting a very rough picture here, but now you can actually, you know, you can talk to different partners that you might get investments from, and you can make a choice. And I hope countries are making the right choice and are going for those partners that are not forcing them in a neo-colonial system, in dependencies and all that. But of course, I mean, I know it's going to be difficult, but I think we are now in a moment where we can build a system that makes it possible for countries to make these kinds of choices that they haven't been able to make maybe in the Cold War era because of all the security issues there. And I hope we're not falling back into that. So, and that's also the answer to, you know, what China's position now is in that. Of course, China is a major player, and a lot will depend on how they are going to act globally. But since we are talking here about historical responsibilities, the question is, do you want, I mean, the colonial system that Western countries built is still very much intact. Let's not be forgetful of that. It's the institutions are still there. It's not like that is gone and now it's China all is up for the grabs from China. That's not how it is. So we have to be very thoughtful of how we deal with that, and I hope we can actually create some space for countries to make their own decisions and come up with and choose the partners that they like the best, basically. And I hope they have a choice that is better than between two bad choices. I hope, but that's just.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I actually have another question. Maybe I will be able to ask it at the end, but now I would like to invite Wondi Asnaker as our respondent. I believe he is online. Yeah, we would be happy to hear your intervention.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Just a few points that I wanted to raise. And the first one is, how I wish this was also an official meeting, not a side event of the HLPF, because this conversation has a huge implication in terms of how we shape our economic, social, and environmental structures of the future. So I hope as we move to the big 2023 summit, maybe there's a better fit for this kind of honest conversation. That is my first point. And the second one, I think Emilia talked about, being told over the top. I think people have the right to tell you whatever they want, but the fact remains, I take you to 2021, last year, when this global climate survey was done with young people. If you look at the wordings that were used in terms of to describe what young people were feeling, they're sad, they're afraid, they're anxious, they're angry, they are powerless, and they feel guilty. And the Lancet did actually an excellent reporting on climate anxiety in children and young people, and the belief about government response in terms of climate change. They're basically saying, they want immediate action, but they have little faith on their leaders. Our leaders are not acting as much as we want them to act or to recognize the urgency. And because of that, now we have a new form of sickness called climate anxiety, or sometimes called eco-anxiety. That is one. So this feeling of over the top is, there's even more when it comes to the younger generation that is going through such a horrible experience in terms of climate change. One example for March and June this year, this young lady from Uganda who asked, a room full of ministers, high-level officials, And the simple question was, how many of you will support loss and damage? And mind you, many of these people are involved in climate-related negotiations. I did not see a single hand. And that tells you in terms of what Wolfgang was talking about, the trust deficit is, these are the people we have elected to lead us, but they're not doing what we actually desperately we need. So the trust deficit is there, and civil society has a significant role to play in shaping this deficit into some profit for the planet and for the economy. And now, as I speak today, also, our the UNEA president, Madame Ben Ali, also presented this morning, the outcome of the UN Environment Assembly. To that, many of you were grateful. Many of you have been involved. You've been active contributors to the process. And for those who may not be aware of what the conversation was all about, this is on the strengthening action for nature to achieve the sustainable development. And the whole idea behind it is we should not be compromising the development and prosperity of future generations. So this is the bottom line to what we're trying to achieve. And then I come to what I call a very positive contribution in terms of the global North in the context of civil society engagement. I think I will specifically link it to our UNEA process and all these resolutions and decisions that are coming out of the UNEA. We have a strong civil society, what is called the Major Groups and Stakeholders Network from this region, and many of you, including Sasha, you've been able to support, and whether it is indirectly or directly, I call it in terms of building capacity of other NGOs, whether it is in our own region, in the Eastern European region, the Caucasus and Central Asia. But also this has also helped in terms of building capacities in Africa, other regions, even in Asia Pacific. And I think this is the kind of solidarity, for example, in terms of building capacity, sharing knowledge, that is desperately needed to strengthen the civil society movement in Africa. I know this is just one simple example, but if we continue to do this, how we've done it in terms of preparation for whether it is the Regional Sustainable Development Forum or our own regional consultations building up to UNEA itself, I think there's a lot of capacity training. We do not herald it a lot, but that must continue. And this is one positive role that I see. Today when we talk about this landmark decision on ending plastic pollution, we should never forget the role of major groups and stakeholders who have played that significant role in shaping the conversation for the last so many years. So in short, there is a bigger role for the global North, the civil society, the major groups and stakeholders. But there's much more to be done. There's the movement and whether it is in Africa, in Asia, Latin America, needs a lot of support, and this has to continue. I think these are the few things that I wanted to share with you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Wondi. And I actually see that we don't have much time, and I would like probably to raise the last question to all our speakers, including Wondi, because and okay, so should we see the film first? How long? Okay. Yeah, because I think it was really great what Wolfgang said about a window of opportunity. And at the same time, we've heard that we see this message of solidarity with Global South, which is not accurate. So my question would be, if there is actually a window of opportunity, let's be positive. So what can we do right now as a civil society which is here all together? How can we change this narrative? Again, I'm trying to be constructive. I really want if you can give us concrete examples or concrete, also from April, like, I don't know, instructions, what we can do right now actually to change this message, to use this window of opportunity. Thank you. I don't know who would like to start. Yeah, please, Emilia.
Just would like to say that the framing is really problematic for us, because to say that criticizing what is happening is not constructive is really, again, a form of tone policing. What we have been saying is this is the problem, and that is constructive. It is constructive in a space in which we are expected to provide technical analysis, but we cannot talk about what harms us, right? And I come from Mexico. I have so many data of my own people dead and tortured and disappeared. I have my own data on my manglers being dead, the fish, and we all are harming, but we cannot just add some adjectives into this very difficult conversation, and we cannot expect, I think, to have all of the solutions at the moment. I think, again, I am always betting on a process. So should we start a process? That would be the best way, you know, and whatever happens in the process is going to be amazing and powerful. But rather than say, what are the positive outtakes or what is the actionable whatever, I think we need to understand that we're living in unprecedented times. I am really shocked that people is acting as if we were not. And just think that rather than evaluating, is this positive, is this negative, is this constructive, is this destructive, is this angry, is this civilized, how are we going to engage in building processes to collectively mobilize people? And I think it is, I'm also talking about our nature. We are part of larger networks. We need to put them in place to mobilize, to have this type of conversations, to see how can we engage furthermore. And I think that is more conducive to the type of action that we need. So my bet, just to close, is to mobilize, to start to mobilize.
April, yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much, just to add to Emilia, because I pretty much agree to all what she said. It's for us in Asia Pacific, it's to go back to our communities and to organize and mobilize. Because the true power is really with the people. We cannot make reforms without the people really the one pushing for. So it's a tough times. People are killed in our countries, in Asia Pacific also. But yeah, I mean, that's why solidarity is important. People-to-people solidarity with the global north, global south. Yeah.
Wolfgang, yes, please.
Yes, I mean, obviously, maybe for myself and my colleagues in the global north, what we need to do is to really shake up our governments. And meaning we really have to tell them that they're in a bad place and they need to act now. And we're going to do, I mean, that's what we're doing all the time. But I think at the moment what we need to create is a little more panic. We need to tell them, look, you're really, you know, you're between a bad and a worse place. So if you are looking for actual solutions, you have to table them. You cannot wait for anyone else to help you out of this, or you cannot wait for the situation to get better by itself. That's what at least Germany has been doing for the last, I don't know, 60 years or so, and it's worked always. But at the moment, we need to tell them, okay, look, you need to act now, and you need to act in a multilateral global space. Otherwise, whatever you do is going to fail in the short term. So that's what we're going to do. I mean, that does not, you know, and for that, of course, to work, we need mobilization also in Germany. And of course, it's difficult. It's not just You know, that in the United States, it's not like I write a blog and then the German government is changing its position or anything. So of course that takes time and effort and work, and I couldn't tell anyone how to do it. I don't even know how to do it in Germany, so why should I, you know, consult anyone on what they're supposed to do? But I know that there's enough people and that we have many bright colleagues that can help us and support us in that. And I think if we do our homework, and that's very important, then I think we can get some success here. And in the short term, this year.
Thank you. Yeah. I also would like to get homework from you later. And Wendy, please, if you have a final comment.
Just a few. One of the things, this is the Aarhus Convention region. And I think we need to take the convention into our hearts, into our hands, into our practice, because we should not just leave it to focal points in the government. This is meant to be one of the best environment diplomacy convention that we have. Let's revisit Principle 10, use it effectively. SDG 16, SDG 10. How do we make sure that between now and the next, for example, SDG summit, how is civil society going to take, you know, governments, business to task by using SDG 16 and 10? The Escazú agreement is another one, something that we should effectively use it to make our case, whether it is on solidarity, whether it is on capacity or South-South, North-South cooperation. I think these are the things we have the tools. Let's use them. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think we should be now ready to watch the video. Yeah, we have also today with us migration activist Ada Udo Abara, and we have a pre-recorded video from her. So please, colleagues, start it. I don't know if we will hear it.
In the north, 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 family of
colleagues online, do you hear Ada?
It was an echo, and now we don't hear anything. No.
Oh, but you can hear and other students.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we have technical difficulties with the video, but I think especially those who registered for the event online, we can always forward the video, right, Sasha? So we hope that you will all watch it, because I think it's also really important to hear from Ada on this topic. So I would like to thank everyone today in our panel. I think it was a great conversation. I personally find it super informative and constructive, actually. Yeah, as I said, I think it's really important that we have this conversation and that we continue talking about it. We have 1 year, and I really would love to talk to Wolfgang exactly how I personally can help. And I think it's really important that we, every of us, takes these responsibilities. It doesn't matter from which country we are, and try to solve this issue. So thank you very much again, and yeah, I hope that we will see each other on some other events, side events, or in person or online. Thank you very much.
Many thanks for the participants online. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for those who joined us online. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, everyone. It was such a great
There's a
event.
solidarity action. April is inviting us to come along. So please join. In the park opposite the UN.
Thank you. Bye-bye.